Maria Bonita and Lampião, the true story. Scene 1. The Backlands. In the heart of northeastern Brazil, during the early 20th century, life was extremely difficult. Drought, poverty, and violence were part of everyday life in the Brazilian backlands. It was in this harsh environment that one of the most famous stories in Brazilian history began. Scene 2. The cangaço. Across the dusty roads of the backlands, groups of armed men traveled through the harsh landscape. They were known as cangaçeiros, and among them, one man would become a legend. Scene 3. Lampião. His name was Virgilino Ferreira da Silva, but the world would know him as Lampião. He became the most famous leader of the cangaço. He was feared throughout much of northeastern Brazil and spent years moving through the Caatinga, avoiding the police forces hunting him. Scene 4. The cangaço. Lampião traveled with a group of armed cangaçeiros. They crossed the dry landscape, carrying their supplies and surviving under extremely difficult conditions. They knew the land well and used the remote areas of the Caatinga to escape their enemies. But Lampião's life was about to change forever. Scene 5. Maria Bonita. Her name was Maria Gomes de Oliveira. She was a woman from Bahia who had been living a relatively ordinary life in the Brazilian countryside. But after meeting Lampião, everything changed. Scene 2. A life-changing decision. Maria made a decision that would completely change her future. She left her former life behind and chose to follow Lampião. It was a dangerous decision. She was entering a world of uncertainty, violence, and constant movement. Scene 7. Lampião and Maria Bonita. As their relationship grew stronger, Maria became Lampião's companion. The two began sharing a life unlike anything most people could imagine. They traveled through the backlands, always aware that danger could appear at any moment. Scene 8. Maria joins the cangaço. Maria became part of the cangaço. She adopted the clothing and traditions of the group and learned how to survive in the harsh conditions of the Brazilian backlands. She was no longer simply a woman from Bahia. She had become Maria Bonita, one of the most famous women in the history of the cangaço. Scene 2. Life on the road. The cangaceiros were constantly on the move. They traveled long distances across the Caatinga, often under extreme heat and with very little water. Men and women faced the same difficult journey, and behind every peaceful moment was the possibility of a sudden confrontation. Scene 1. Nights in the backlands. When night came, the group would stop and rest around a campfire. They could eat, talk, and recover from the long journey. For a brief moment, life could seem peaceful, but they knew that their enemies could be searching for them. Scene 3. A dangerous life. Narration. Life in the cangaço was never truly safe. The group constantly had to move from one place to another. They knew that the police forces were hunting them. Every sound in the darkness could mean danger. For Lampião and Maria Bonita, there was no guarantee that they would see another sunrise. Scene 12. The birth of Expedita. In 1932. Maria Bonita gave birth to a daughter named Expedita. For a short time, their dangerous life was touched by the happiness of having a child. But raising a baby while living as a hunted cangaço was impossible. Expedita was eventually sent away to be raised by others. Maria and Lampião continued their life on the run. Scene 13. The Trap. By 1938, the authorities were getting closer. The police forces had learned more about the movements of Lampião's group. Eventually, they discovered their location near Angicos, in the state of Sergipe. Lampião and his companions believed they were hidden, but the police were already preparing a surprise attack. Scene 14. The Final Attack. On July 28, 1938, before sunrise, the attack began. The cangaçeros were caught by surprise. Gunfire filled the area as the group tried to defend itself. Lampião was killed during the attack. Maria Bonita was also killed. The couple who had become symbols of the cangaço had reached the end of their journey. Scene 2. The end of the cangaço. The death of Lampião marked a major turning point. The cangaço did not disappear immediately, but its most famous leader was gone. Over the following years, the remaining groups gradually surrendered or disappeared, an era that had shaped the history of northeastern Brazil was coming to an end. Scene 16. The Legacy. Decades later, the names of Lampião and Maria Bonita are still remembered throughout Brazil. Their story has inspired books, films, songs, museums, and countless legends. To some, Lampião was a dangerous bandit. To others, he became a symbol of resistance against the powerful. And Maria Bonita became one of the most famous women of the cangaço. Their story is a complicated part of Brazil's history. But one thing is certain. Their legend never disappeared. Their lives ended in 1938, but their names would live on for generations. Lampião and Maria Bonita, two figures who became legends of the Brazilian Backlands.